It is episode 3 of The Rings of Power, and I am questioning my life decisions that brought me to this point. At 8 o'clock in the morning, as I just finished watching this thing that I just do not care about.
I mean...
It's almost funny, in a way.
The sun's coming up, and you're just wondering, like, why did I do that? Fair enough, you know?
On the bright side, right? On the bright side, stuff happened this episode. It was a better episode than the 2 preceding ones. We have finally had the plot presented to us. The reason for giving a shit has at least been vaguely outlined in the middle distance, but we are 3 hours in now, and I'm still unsure why I'm supposed to care for half the characters. And Black Elf, for example, the only reason we're supposed to care for him is where he is. Southlands, which is now clearly that is going to be Mordor. It's like, okay, I guess I care about Mordor, but who's this guy? Why do I give a shit? And that's loosely combined with Halbrand, who is apparently the king of these people, who was lost in the middle of the ocean because reasons.
They also set him up in such a way that he's basically just Aragorn 2.0.
Literally. He is the promised king that will one day return to his lands to unify his people. Like, Jesus. Except this time he's going to do so as Sauron. We're going to have okay, right. No, seriously. We are going to have 7 Saurons. Because the show is setting up so many red herrings right now. So this episode was named Arda. It was such a big fat lie because you don't see him. It's an elf, I'm 98% certain, who pops up at the very last moment of the episode in half shadow because he's apparently worshipped by the Ku Klux Klan orcs that live in the Southlands now.
The very pasty white orcs that wear very white garb.
God, is that a weird one too? It's like, okay.
Yeah, it's weird.
Now, orcs have a variety of skin colors. They can be white-ish, but mostly they're
sickly.
Yeah, they're sallow skinned, off darkish white, very dirty. They can also be straight up green, although we haven't seen that in the movies at all, I think. Brown, grey, black, full-on pitch black, like the Uruk-hai, for example. But these guys...
colors.
These guys are bright white, wearing bright white clothing. What?
Yes, orcs, it feels like when you watch it, you're like, that's just, that doesn't, they don't feel like they're Lord of the Rings orcs, like they're some sort of offshoot species or something.
I swear to God, when I'm watching it, it feels like some kind of commentary on white supremacy. That's what I get out of this, because this is one of those shows. And again, I want to point out too, for the orcs, this isn't our universe, right? Where white is a neutral cover, anybody can wear it regardless. Orcs are evil. Straight up, they are naturally evil. The color white repels them. They don't like it. It's bad for them. It is, it's like our reaction to seeing a cockroach. It's something that disgusts them. On the same visceral level that being exposed to sunlight hurts them, because they are evil creatures.
They can only travel in the dark.
That's what made the Uruk-hai so special, because they do not fear the sunlight. And even then, it was implied that they don't like the sun, but they're strong, and they don't give a shit.
Yep, they can move across the land while the sun is out, which makes them very dangerous compared to the orcs, who can only move in darkness, or when, the bad guys are basically using their powers to sort of blot out the sun.
Yes. And I don't think they burn in the sunlight either. They just really, it's incredibly uncomfortable for them. Though, I'm not sure about that. I mean, trolls literally turn to stone in sunlight, so...
Some creatures, especially creatures of evil, do not like the sun.
I would also like to point out, though, that they only mind the sun when it is plot relevant or convenient.
Yep. We see that in a scene where they show us the Black Elf and his party, and they're clearly hiding in the shade, right? And then a few seconds later, when they're just doing evil stuff, they're out in the sunlight, just whatever, not even bothered.
Yep.
It's right as we were about to compliment, like, that's a nice touch. They have to be in the shade all the time, and then they just like forget about it for that scene. It's like, okay,
Yes.
very good, very good.
It only matters when it's supposed to matter. The orcs are weird. So Black Elf is just off doing Black Elf things, and we don't know anything else than that. Oh, and by the way, his entire garrison, we were wondering why the woman didn't run to the garrison, because that would be the obvious target, like there's orcs about. That's because the entire garrison was overrun off-screen.
Yep, not only overrun, but they were all taken alive.
Yeah, they were all captured too.
The Elven garrison were all taken alive and taken as captives and are now working as slaves, basically digging a trench for them to creep along on the ground that they are putting, like, sort of tarps over to sort of hide their troop movements.
It's also so contrived. Like, okay, so you're telling me the orcs created an entire network of tunnels stretching under all kinds of little towns all the way over to whatever her name was' house and shit? But now they need slaves?
See, now is different, okay? Because the plot has changed, and we need the Black Elf not to die outright, so he has to be a slave for a little bit, so he can break free.
That seems to be the only reason. Like, oh, we gotta keep you a slave because you're a lot of plot armor. Oh, also, the poor elves... Okay, so they scratch one of the elves because they're doing a creepy thing. It's like, oh, we're being nice, but, you know, they're not because, you know, orcs. And they slice open his neck, and you know what's supposed to happen is they cut him deep and blood fountains out, blah, 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 and he dies on the ground. Except he doesn't. Like, the wound barely bleeds.
Like a little tiny paper cut, and he's like, looks at his friend, and he's like, oh no, and then falls over and pretends to be dead.
It feels like they forgot to add in the effects or something. Because Black Elf is like, oh my god, you're dying. And all I can think is the dude must be like, I'm seriously not though. Like, it's barely a scratch. No, you're dying, brother. Hold on, I'm not. Holds his mouth, whole hand over his mouth. No. Shh, pass on.
Pass on. You don't understand. This is... See, that's part of his ploy, okay? To get one of the elves out. Oh, he's totally dead now. You don't have to worry about watching him. And their whole ploy is to basically distract the guards, and they have a little revolt, and it fails. And basically, all hope is lost, you know. The elves were defeated, and they spared the Black Elf. Because we need to see in the next episode, we need to see Arda.
Yes, who's an elf. And here's the thing too, yes, the orcs were originally corrupted elves, but they were corrupted by Morgoth, the literal god of evil. Somehow, I don't think that some rando in the Southlands can repeat this. Hell, Sauron couldn't repeat this. When Sauron did it, that's a completely different thing. He's a goddamn wizard. Like, he is closer to the angels than Sauron is. Or Sauron is... Oh god, what was Sauron again? What was the term for that?
I forget the technical term, but when it comes to him, he also had a bunch of like archives and knowledge and knew almost all the spells and whatnot. Saruman did. So it wasn't particularly hard for him to come upon the knowledge.
Yeah, no, Sauron is special, but Sauron was,
I know the word you're looking for, but it's on the tip of my tongue, but I can't remember how to...
Maiar.
What it is.
Maiar, was it?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, so he was a Maiar of the Ancient Age, so he would be lesser in knowledge than, you know, Sauron, etc., because they were, well, newer, quote-unquote.
Newer knowledge, so he doesn't... That's why he doesn't know how to make the Uruk-hai.
Also because Sauron was far more, industrial research. Like, that was... I always liked the Uruk-hai. Like, the Uruk-hai were a cool concept. They were excellently done in the movie, because it seemed like he was building a empire of industry, kind of. It was really neat.
Mm-hmm. But they were also going off the idea that Saruman didn't want to share the ring, or didn't want to give the ring to Sauron. Saruman very much, and if you read the book, is intent on keeping the ring for himself to become basically the new lieutenant of Morgoth.
Mm-hmm.
The new Dark Lord.
What else? Okay, so we didn't see Elrond or the dwarves, which are a bit sad. We saw far too much of the goddamn Harfoots. The Harfoots, too, they just exist to exist. Like, their storyline is nothing so far, except the stranger is there, and we'll have to wait and see. Like, that's their entire story. And I want to remind you again, we are 3 hours in. We are practically through the runtime of the extended edition of the Fellowship of the Ring, which is 3 hours, 40 minutes, plus, credits, etc. We've practically gone through the entire Fellowship, and we're barely beginning to see plot.
We're basically right at the point in Big End where Gandalf is discussing with Frodo the plot of the Lord of the Rings, where they're about to embark on the quest about the ring, because they've just discovered the symbol is not just a symbol; it's a part of a map, and the map is the Southlands. It's like the Southlands are where the evil is going to be. That's going to be the new seat of evil power.
It is glacially slow, and hell, we could go on a while about the plot inconsistencies, but I'm not, because honestly, you all know this isn't the Lord of the Rings show, Elendil is introduced, he's the same height as Galadriel. There's nothing special about it. Elendil was literally known as the Tall amongst the Númenóreans. The Númenóreans were all ridiculously tall. Elendil was something like 2.5 meters. Like, he was ridiculously tall.
Elendil's a big boy. But he's kind of just not that tall here. And what annoys me about this, right, is in the Lord of the Rings, in the original trilogy, they had less money than they had for the show. And they also managed to pull off good camera tricks to make the dwarf look a little bit shorter than the humans, and to also make the hobbits look extremely short by comparison, using clever camera working and other tricks to basically make you perceive them as very small.
Yes. They haven't bothered with that with Elendil. The stranger does look big. Sort of, kinda, occasionally. That's nice.
I think they're doing some camera tricks with the stranger to make him look big, which is... And honestly, I find it annoying, because they could do it... If they could do it there, why can't they do it here?
They could do it with Elendil as well.
Yeah, why can't you do it over here, too?
Elendil also has a daughter now, suddenly, who exists only to be the voice of reason. Like, I bet you, that is the only reason why she exists. Because she will be the one who calls it. And then Elendil, the savior of Númenor, or, well, the survivors of Númenor anyways, will only be doing what he does because of her say-so. I call that right now.
She's also a bit of a savant, because she technically failed to get into the engineering guild or something, or the guild of builders.
Builders Guild, yes.
And then the second time she tried again, and she's like, I made it. And I'm like, what? No one's ever made it the second time if they don't make it the first time. Say,
And that was because Isildur told her to. Isildur too has been out in the sun for a little bit too long, but such is the current year. What can I bloody say?
Doesn't look anything like even a younger Isildur from the other movies.
No, he doesn't look like him at all. But that's the thing too. The Númenóreans don't look like Númenóreans. The Númenóreans are just regular people. There's black Númenóreans. There's Asian Númenóreans. It's just downtown California in costumes.
Yep, and that's kind of a disappointment, because in the original Lord of the Rings trilogy, they very much got actors that looked like they were part of a certain region. Like the Rohirrim looked like, they were from that sort of Nordic land, versus the Gondorians had a very, blackish hair but curly and browns and stuff like that. They were starkly contrasted versus the elves of Lothlorien and stuff when they showed up at Helm's Deep with the long flowing hair. They specifically cast actors on their race, and in a way that made them look, well, like they were part of the elven race, or they were part of the Rohirrim, or they were part of, the Gondorians, etc.
Mm-hmm. Galadriel's story does move a little bit forward, which is nice, finally. She figures out the mark is a map rather than the Mark of Sauron, which, again, her story is 3 hours long at this point. And all that has happened is that she turned the mark on its side and went it's a map.
Oh my god, you put it on the middle. Oh, it's the Southlands. Wow. The worst part about it, I think, that whole plot reveal, is that there's a literal scroll where Sauron had written down his plans, gonna put my new seat of power over here, and it's gonna be the place where all the bad guys are gonna be. It's like, why did you write that down? Why actually did you write that down?
Don't even know. No, stupidly enough, the most interesting character so far is probably one of the made-up ones, which is Halbrand, because he is well, on the one hand, he's just Aragon, but on the other, he's also like a lovable rogue type of character. Like, he steals things, he schmoozes, he's charismatic. And he's a bit mysterious too, as he demonstrates ridiculous fighting prowess.
Incredible fighting prowess, and he just has a way with words. Like, there was a point in which, when the elf was brought, Galadriel was brought before the Númenórean regent queen, and there was almost a point in which it sounded like things were going to get really ugly, and he just swoops in and just, with a few words, shifts the entire tone of the conversation.
Because Galadriel is just like, oh, you don't want to let me leave? Well, I'll kill you then. Like, oh god, Galadriel, just...
Like, Galadriel, stop. What are you doing? Like,
down.
For an Eldar, for an elf, you certainly are impatient.
It's crazy. But that also leads us back to the whole who the hell is Sauron thing, who seems to be the only plot point right now, and I am leaning towards all of them being Sauron, and it'll just be like, oh, they were all Saurons. The plot points were taking place at the different times, you see. And that would be kind of clever. Because it would show how brilliant Sauron was. Like, he orchestrated all of this from the shadows, but I don't think they're smart enough to do that.
Not only that they're smart enough to do it, but they have to be good enough to pull that off. Because if they could pull that off, I mean, that would actually be a redeeming quality of the show. Be like, oh, that's a clever twist, But at the same time, it's one of those things where it's like, I don't have high hopes nor expectations. I'd love to be wrong here, though.
It's certainly... Oh, God. Again, I want to stress the goddamn pacing of this. I really do. Like, 3 hours. And we're just beginning to see the outlines of the plot.
Yeah, I think that the other issue is, if you look at the other 2 episodes, what they mostly do is they establish the different character stories that they're going to be using in the show. And I think the problem is what they should have done is, instead of doing it that way, they should have focused on one singular story and then slowly start showing us more character arcs as the story progresses, rather than trying to front load it all in 1 episode, or 1 and 2 episodes. Because that's why nothing happened in those 2 episodes. It was like, hey, here's this character. Hey, here's this character. Hey, here's this thing. Too much introductory, not enough actually anything happening.
Yep. Poorly paced. Poorly paced. On the bright side, though, again, it was a better episode than the 2 preceding ones. But even then, it only elevates the show to a...
Yeah, I think the best this show might get away with is it might be like a
shrug.
And for $50 billion or whatever it was, isn't really good enough.
Not really. And also, we have to mention the Vargpug.
Oh,
the Pug
that's
Varg.
Horrific.
I love this thing.
I don't.
I do.
I hated that thing when I...
The Pug Varg is great.
Dumb. I don't know what, okay, so the CG effects and a lot of these scene shots and whatnot are actually pretty good. However, there's a scene in which we see a pug-looking Varg thing attack the elves as they're attempting to revolt. And the camera gets closer to the pug Varg's face, and it's got these big bulging eyes, and it's in the uncanny valley really bad, where you're looking at it going like, that's not scary, that's just really weird looking. Can we keep that thing at a distance, cameraman? Can we not get close to that thing? And they're like, let's do a zoom in shot to its face. I was like, yes, this isn't looking so good.
I hope Pugvarg lives, because I'm more invested in Pugvarg than I am... Why God, let me look up. Arondir, there you go. Diversity higher, number 3. Arondir. I am more invested in Pugvarg's storyline than Arondir. Like, why does Pugvarg look like that?
See, Barch is big into Pugvarg, and I hate to burst his little bubble here already. And I know the show is it struggles to keep our attention because it is a struggle to pay attention to the show. But Pugvarg actually dies.
No,
Pugvarg
will be fine. Like Pugvarg has a bit of a spear wound, but that's fixable.
A bit of a spear wound, like he's dead. Like
Pugvarg will be
you know that
fine.
little cut on that elf that got that paper cut on his neck? If he died from that,
Pugvarg is a bit tougher than an elf.
Pugvarg is very dead. Like, that is a dead Varg.
Okay, I watched also the Thor Love and Thunder recently. Russian ways, of course. And it actually has, like, most of it is just awful. Like, it is one long comedic relief making fun of Thor, which is just, but it has one genuinely funny thing in it, or two things actually, and that's the two goats that pull Thor's ship. They are genuinely hilarious because they scream, and they scream, and they scream. They don't want to be there, Kyle. And they are telling you very loudly, yet nobody seems to care. They are the victims of this show, being forced to run around everywhere. They were the only good part, Kyle. And Pugvarg will be the only good part of this show.
That seems unlikely. I think the only good part about this show is the fact that every episode we watch is one less episode this show has left in it.
That is true too. As, well, honestly, I'm kind of struggling to find anything else to talk about. I don't think...
Yeah, it's just kind of not that interesting, is it?
Yeah, no. Final conclusion on episode 3. Shrug. Let's see what the story brings in hour 4.
Yeah, like, I don't know about you, but the biggest thing that happened when we were watching this with Dev and whatnot was, like, I remember drinking out of my Coca-Cola bottle and I'm like, the bubbles are nice. Like, these are nice bubbles. Like, I was more excited about the bubbles in my Coca-Cola bottle than I was about anything I was watching.
Yep. A hard meh is my conclusion so far, and maybe we'll get more dwarves next time. I look forward to the dwarves. The dwarves are funny. I hope they have goats.